Chapter 51. Selez. The elites that escorted Selez through the council chambers were unnecessary. His sunken, resigned shoulders followed them with no resistance. Bloodshot eyes were fixed straight ahead at their backs as they led him out into the orange-tinged waters of the interior. The only obstruction between this level of the interior and the surface was the origin womb, the ancient birthing reef of the first Naga. Now only the prestigious families of the interior were allowed to use it. It broke the surface of the water like a giant flower in bloom. It grew from a mile-long cylinder stalk of metal latticework. The light well. It sprang from the basalt rock at the bottom of the caldera, pathing straight through the entire interior reef to kiss the surface. It was said that Negan himself planted the very first corals alongside this cylinder to create the first reef. While the Naga had many other channels in the reef designed to allow light inside, the light well was symbolic. It was a serious crime to enter or obstruct the flow of light in any way, but exceptions existed. When newborn Naga gills were matured, they would be brought into the reef for the first time by descending the well. It was said there was one other circumstance when access would be sanctioned: to provide fast response in defense of the origin womb. But the origin womb had never been attacked. Indeed, the first reef itself had never been threatened in any real way. The chain around his waist was a paka girdle that had been retrofitted with 2 leashes held by the guards. Their answer to his missing arm, thwarting standard cuffs. The chain started to drift at an upward angle, going taut and pulling against his waist. He adjusted his swimming to their pathing, and the chain went slightly slack again. The new upward trajectory pulled them into the vast open space 40 meters from the surface, where the only Naga structures were the light well and the small birthing surface reef it supported. Few Naga normally traverse this area: mothers and their caretakers, shapers, and priestesses. Today, it was empty. Those involved in his darkening were already assembled. Those observing watched from below. He felt their eyes on him. How many Naga below will use me as an example to be avoided? How many young Naga will watch and assume that I deserve this? While the humans defile our waters, while one of their own has been slain, he thought. His eyes burned with rage. I will slay the human and avenge Bergrant, he shouted into his mind. The guards led him to the bottom of the origin womb and then into a gap in the latticework of the light well. It glowed orange with the rays of the sunset. 100,000 pairs of eyes shifted to reflective surfaces, normally responsible for spreading the light into the depths of the interior, now serving to allow witness to the ceremony taking place at the top of the well. From the furthest reaches, only a shadow obscuring the light would be seen, but they would watch anyways. So they could say they were here. So they could point to each other and say, "This is what happens when you lack honor." Many would only watch because of morbid fascination with the darkening ceremony itself. The Dark Tithe. The 10% of Naga newborns that were blinded each birthing season would never know the light. For them, the procedure was said to be painless. Their faces were first brushed with a numbing concoction before the acid was applied. For them, the darkening is a necessary honor, a sacrifice. Ra-i-no smiles upon them. The mothers who wished a normal life for their offspring would stay silent as they matured and were carried off to the deep watch. The gods answer their sacrifice with boons to help them adapt to their new homes. While they do not see with their eyes, they gain enhancements to other senses, allowing them to navigate and fight in the deeps. Their bodies also change, becoming tougher and resistant to the pressures of the deep. For an adult darkened, as punishment for transgressions, none of these things would occur. The older they are, the worse the adaptation. Most adults are never again able to traverse even the calmest waters. It was a severe handicap, and combined with the shame, resulted in most taking their own lives. Some swam off into the wilds, never to be heard from again. They guided him all the way to the top of the light well, where it expanded into a wider rim. Like an open bowl, it terminated 10 feet below the orange shimmering surface. From above, it would look like a pool in the middle of a tropical reef. After the emergence, this reef would be filled with newborns and their caretakers, but for now it was only occupied by the Honor Council. As the guards led him out of the top of the light well, he saw them. First, General Ironscale, then Tide Lord Calinth, and last, the first of Ezreia, his mother. He glanced at her emotionless face, betraying none of her inner thoughts. Her hands clasped a small sealed jar in front of her, the poison. There would be no numbing concoction for him. 2 metal rods rose from opposite ends of the bowl at the peak of the light well. The guards spread out and secured a chain to each. Selez stopped swimming now, allowing his body to sink back down until the chains went taut, suspending his body over the center of the well. They had arranged him to face the 3 leaders. Tide Lord Calinth stepped forward to the edge of the bowl. I, Tide Lord Calinth, before all eyes, stand in judgment of Selez Lumenscale. His voice seemed to echo down the light well and spread out to fill every corner of the reef. His transgressions include defying a Tide Lord, attempted theft of a Tide armament, committing unwarranted violence, and multiple counts of deception. A son of Nagara lies dead from his actions. He paused as the waters of the first reef shifted with the murmuring masses. The gods have marked him sullied, and he has shown no remorse for his actions. Selez Lumenscale is to be darkened and exiled from Nagara. None are to offer him assistance. His redemption is in the hands of the gods. Selez burned with anger. He wanted to shout down the light well his defiance. Allowing humans to defile their waters should be the real shame. But Grant's death was on humans' hands. If they were too coward to seek justice, then he would do it himself. But he knew if he attempted to speak, he would be silenced. The judged were not permitted voice during the judgment. His mother started to approach him. Tide Lord Calinth spread his arms toward the reef around them. Selez Lumenscale, in the light of the fading sun, gaze upon the world that you have tarnished. Burn it into your mind. When you think back to this moment, remember that it was your own actions that caused it to go dark. Selez, through bloodshot eyes, glanced around at the origin reef, a lush field of blue and green corals, swaying with the ebb and flows of the orange and red tinged waters of the setting sun. Schools of rainbow fish sparkled as they reflected light off their translucent scales. He had been born here. His mother had carried him down the light well. She had been there when his eyes had opened to the world. Now, she would close them. He stared at her as she uncapped the jar and dipped the sponge-tipped coral brush into the brown cream. He looked for any sign of recognition, any reaction, as she raised the brush to his face. Her eyes were passive, as though she were painting a canvas. She held the brush up to his eyes. She pressed it against the skin just to the right of his eyes first. He felt the softness of the sponge and then tingling as the acid started to eat away at the top layer of skin. As the brush started to sweep across his face, his eyes involuntarily tried to close, but he found them held open as her painting hand glowed blue. The brush made contact with his eyes, and a tingling ember of pain quickly escalated into an inferno. Burning, melting, agony. His mouth opened to scream, but was muted. The judged were not given a voice here. Through the agony, his eyes were held open and his mind screamed. He stared into his mother's neutral eyes. Black splotches appeared in his vision, like ink dropped onto wet canvas. They expanded outwards, chasing away the color, leaving only a black void. Her eyes disappeared first, then her face melted away. Her body was next. Soon he was staring at a window of black void. It fought with a final border of orange-red shimmering light, like the sun eclipsed by the moon, except this moon steadily grew larger, and slowly the last glimmers of the halo dwindled. Then only darkness was left. He was dimly aware of a slight shift in the water as she turned and left. Tide Lord Kalen's voice boomed once more. Selez Lumen Scale will now be expunged from the city. Let him serve as an example to all Naga. Remember him when your honor wavers. Remember him when you doubt the gods. This is the path you walk. His eyes had settled from a raging inferno of agony into singeing embers. He felt the chain securing him shift and then started to pull him back down the light well. They no longer served only as restraints. Now they were guidelines. When the pain no longer consuming with the pain no longer consuming his thoughts, his anger was reignited. He felt the eyes of Nagara directing shame at his back as he was guided down the light well. How they were disgusted by him, how they were disappointed by him, how they pitied him. He felt it all and condensed it within him into a distilled emotion of his own. Hatred. I will slay the human and avenge Bagrant, his mind shouted. He felt the chain shift horizontally. A hard metal piece of the Lightwell's latticework caught on his shoulder. The pull from the chain starting to squish him against the hard surface before the guards realized what happened. He heard some young Naga somewhere nearby laughing. I will slay the human and avenge Bagrant. How far had they pulled him? It seemed like an age, and yet still he heard the murmurs. Still he smelled the city around him. A shift in the current and the sounds muted. Then the chains slackened. Selez. It was Talinth, the betrayer. I took no joy in your judgment. I had no idea what Tide Lord Absaloth had recorded. I spoke honestly, but I do regret that it has come to this. He paused a moment and came closer, whispering into Selez's ear. I heard you issued a blood oath against the human, and Kalenth nullified it. Do not attempt to pursue it, Selez. If there is redemption to be had, it does not lie on that path. Selez was silent. He only spoke into his thoughts. dare he approach me now and attempt to sway my path? Talenth waited a few moments, and then Selez felt him leave. Chains pulled him forward once more. The murmuring and smells of the city faded. He got the sense he had been finally brought out of the reef, but still the chains pulled him along. He felt the waters start to grow cooler. Was it because of the onset of night, or were they taking him deeper? He thought. He started to lose track of time. The cooling of the water seemed to cool his mind, and his anger finally started to abate. Still, the chain pulled him along. "All right, this is far enough," he heard one of the guards say. "Should we remove the chains?" "You can if you want to. I'm not touching a Sullied." He felt the chains go slack and then start to float downward. They weren't so heavy he couldn't swim against them, but as they sank below him, he allowed them to pull him downward. Left in the quiet, cool deep, finally alone, there was no one to direct his anger toward. Reality started to set in. He didn't know where he was. He would not be able to find his way. His people had forsaken him. He had no home. He had no family. His burning, milky white eyes blinked tears into the salt water, and he sank